Call the meeting to order at 6:02. We'll move on, Amy. Okay, in your packet was a secretary's report dated 10/6/2020. I'll entertain a motion to accept those meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody have any questions or concerns with those meeting minutes? Okay, we will do a roll call vote to accept those meeting minutes. Start with Pam,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Ed. Ed? Muted? Amy, I think he's muted.
Okay, I'll go help him out.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. John,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and Jeff is a yes. Motion carries 700. Okay, moving on to warrants. We had an email last week and an email this week. So please make sure that you review the warrant articles, sign them, and return them to Amy at your earliest convenience, please. Superintendent Willard, any correspondence?
I do not have any correspondence this evening.
Okay. Moving on to our first public comment. Folks that want to make a public comment can do so using the superintendent at STGRSD.org email address. Public comments received to that account will be read either at this public comment or our later public comment in the agenda. Amy, would you please check the account?
Okay, Chairman Houle, I have one public comment. It's from Robert Stevenson, Southwick, Massachusetts. He states, "Good evening, school board committee members and Superintendent Willard. I want to put forth a proposal that may be helpful for the decision concerning our school sports participation that will need to be made in the upcoming months. We should not be waiting until the last minute to make these decisions for the remaining sports seasons. In your policies, it indicates that you can create subcommittees for a specific purpose and to make recommendations for specific actions. This seems to be a perfect opportunity to create a subcommittee. I'm sorry, I'm going to mute. This seems to be a perfect opportunity to create a subcommittee to investigate our potential participation in the upcoming sports seasons that are remaining this school year. This would allow you as a committee to be able to have ample time to obtain all relevant data from multiple sources in order to make a sound decision. I think everyone can agree that the process and the time frame that you were provided in order to make the decision concerning fall sports was not handled in an orderly and timely fashion. It certainly appeared by much of the community that the situation was already decided before it was even brought up to the school board. The student athletes of this district deserve better. I am hoping that everyone involved would like to avoid the uproar from the community and the students that is still currently being expressed with the decisions that you will need to make going forward on this topic. There have been several studies that have come out in the last couple of weeks that clearly show that there has not been a significant increase of students that are participating in sporting activities contracting COVID-19. One showed that the incidence of transmission was lower for student athletes than students that did not participate in sports. This type of scientific information needs to be considered before another decision is made concerning this district's participation in the remaining sports for this school year. I am hoping that the committee will address this proposal in the new business section of tonight's meeting and have a discussion on whether this would be an option worth pursuing. There are solutions to all the concerns that were brought up during the fall sports discussions. There was just not adequate time to respond and come up with a plan that could be accepted by the school committee. We are a community that wants to be able to keep everyone safe as possible, but still allow the children of the district to lead as normal lives as they can. Please do not take this opportunity away from more student athletes this year without a real examination of what we can do to make this work instead of just looking for reasons to not make this an option. Thank you. That concludes public session, public comment.
Moving on to student advisory. We don't have a report this evening. Okay, educational presentations. Up first, we have Kate Johnson and Tammy Spencer to speak to the school board this evening.
Hey, before they begin, this is Superintendent Willard. I'd just like to introduce Kate Johnson. She is the public health nurse for the town of Southwick, as Chairman Houle said, and also Tammy Spencer, who's the health director for the Southwick Board of Health. They're going to go into some detail for the school committee, and the school committee can ask questions that they have. But I want to let you know that these two professionals are instrumental in the decision-making of the school district and our ability to keep our doors open for learning with our students. We meet every Thursday with our union, our chair of the school committee, our lead nurse, myself, and Kate and Tammy, and we discuss the COVID pandemic, any trends and patterns, and the information that they provide and their insight is instrumental to what we're doing as a district. So I turn over this presentation to Kate Johnson and Tammy Spencer.
This is Tammy. I just want to thank Dr. Willard. Through this whole thing, it's been very confusing for so many parties involved, and it's just been, I think, a breath of fresh air that all the departments have been working so well together. When we all started in the beginning, a lot of the protocols and guidance were really confusing, and we were just able to make the best of it, make the best informed decisions, and come up with a plan that, while still involving, I think is best for our schools. I'm here to answer questions, but Kate put together a great presentation, so take it away, Kate.
Okay, hi everybody. Good evening. So I've been living the COVID world, as you can imagine, for 8 months or so. The challenge, probably the biggest challenge for me, is that it's the COVID virus is what I would call a moving target. So every day things might change multiple times in terms of tracing, testing, what's positive, what's not positive, suspect, that type of thing. And so it does require a lot of communication with a lot of different people in the town. Even if we're a small population, it's still very evident in our town, and we have to make good choices around protecting everyone. So I'm wondering, do I have a slide? Oh, there it is. Excellent, thank you. So let me just talk a little bit about this slide. So every week, the state, in their infamous data management world, what they do is they look at data in what I would call like a snapshot in time. So they started really reporting good data probably early August, where they were figuring out the metrics. They were figuring out how to calculate the metrics, which are very, very confusing. Probably not to epidemiologists, but certainly, if you look at this grid, this table, it can seem a little bit confusing. So anyway, so I put this table together because every Wednesday night we get a report from the state and it gives us that snapshot. So you can see kind of the lower weeks in white. They really didn't do the color-coded metrics. And then end of August, we went into a gray, what they call a gray color based on total cases, looking at total testing, how it's changed, and they look at it every 14 days. So even though we get the report weekly, they're looking back the last 14 days. So it can be tricky. So then we went into the yellow, and then we've had several weeks of gray. And what happens is because we're a small community, they actually do our metrics differently than if we were in Westfield or in Springfield or in Boston, because of privacy issues and looking at the numbers and how they can be interpreted. So we want to be very, very sensitive to that. So we had a lot of gray weeks. You can see, going from early September, Labor Day. The last report was last Wednesday night. And if you look at this data, we're back in the yellow, okay? But that is expected. I'm not surprised that we're back in the yellow. We really want to be in the gray. That's ideal in terms of case count. But I'm not surprised we're in the yellow. But what I would tell you is that as of the 14th, they have us at 74 total cases, which is inaccurate. They're actually underreporting. And that's could be for multiple reasons. It's the timing of lab tests. It's how they collect the data, how they do the metrics. But what I tell people when I talk to them is that we really know the pulse in the community to the best of our knowledge. So currently, I can tell you that we have 86 positive cases, and that is since March 1st. We have currently 7 contacts. So those people are close contacts of people that have tested positive. Some people want to be tested, some do not. They'll just do the quarantine for the 14 days, and that's what they decide to do. So I do get a little, I don't want to say weird, but I do, show the calculations here, but looking at the total cases, it is underreported. And then obviously it would be calculated out. They've tried to explain the metrics, but it's very, very complex. And so I just say, I know my lab reports. I know the people I speak to in the community, whether it's the school nurse, family members, friends or neighbors of contacts and positive COVID cases. And so that's what really is the most important thing to me, and that we're implementing the protocols and the guidance that we know are the best for what we have at our hands. So that's kind of our snapshot dashboard for Southwick. Do you have any comments about that or questions?
So this is Pam. I appreciate the information and the tremendous amount of hard work and constant communication that you both are in. And I also appreciate, you explaining that this information represents some underreporting. Can I ask, when the case count within the last 14 days, is that number also slightly underreported, or is it just the total case count that's underreported?
Well, it would have a cause and effect, because if you add that up to get to the 74, they could be miscalculating the total positive test for the 14 days. And that's where it gets very complex, because we, as public health nurses, we want to say, well, when do you start the test or the counting of the 14 days? And I believe they go back 14 days from the Wednesday to the Wednesday to the Wednesday back, which would not be accurate. So again, I look at the stats, I look at the information, but what's more important to me is what's really and truly happening in our communities. And the information that I receive is it's electronic surveillance. So it is through a web-based, password-protected database that is statewide, where I get lab results, and that's how I start my investigation. And it's very private. We can only see the towns that we are a public health nurse in unless it's a shared case. So for example, a shared case would be if there was a resident, say a 75-year-old who actually lives in Southwick, but went to a Westfield or West Springfield nursing home or long-term care facility, I would share that with that other community so we can communicate back and forth. That would be really the only exemption for the privacy of that particular person.
Hi, this is Superintendent Willard. I just also want to share that Kate knows each individual person who tests positive. These are numbers to the community, but Kate goes through and makes personal contact and is in constant contact with me as superintendent, because the question I ask her as soon as a new number comes out is there any school connection? So as soon as Kate has a positive, she's in contact with me as superintendent, and we're already starting to look if there's any connection to the schools. So that is the real time communication that we are having, if it's on a Saturday, if it's on a Sunday, if it's on Columbus Day. We are working 7 days a week and making sure that we're staying on top of the COVID pandemic, not only in Southwick, but also in our schools.
Sure, absolutely. And it's kind of, what's interesting is, you know, I'm a little bit, I don't want to say intense, but I'm pretty intense because the sooner that I get notified, so it can come couple ways. I can get an email depending on how it's flagged in the system. I have had calls from the state, you know, so for example, if there was a serious outbreak, then they obviously communicate more, but the individuals are contacted. If I get a case at 6 in the morning, I'm on the phone by 10, because it's really important to get information and start the contact tracing process and educate. I mean, that's a huge issue. And I love the fact that, you know, I could have a conversation with a family or a mom or a dad or, you know, an elderly person. And I say to them, you know, this is, you know, can be scary. It can be nerve-wracking. And I say, call me back if you have questions. And they do. And it's really great because they tell me things that I would have to wait for in a system, if you will, a computer system, but I get that information very quickly. And I think those relationships are extremely important, especially with a pandemic. Any other comments?
So I do have one more question. This is Pam again. You know, as I'm sure you know, the topic of athletics, the region has been.
And we lost you.
Yeah, we lost you. Yeah.
Teams or the coaches from those teams or the directors of those programs in contact with either of you ladies? And do they need clearance from you in order to be able to play?
No and no.
Right. I mean, I can tell you that very few contacts happened over the summer, and we have that next graph. I can tell you that the contacts have increased because of sports. It's specifically related to sports teams. I would love to see the data on the athletes versus the non-athletes in terms of transmission. I'm not aware of any study that's come out, but I would be curious to read that and understand where the source comes from.
So are you saying that in your experience, you have seen cases related to athletics?
Not positive cases, not positive COVID cases, contacts of positive cases through sports.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, ready for this pretty little graph? So this looks really busy, but let me explain how I've done this spreadsheet. So probably twice a day, 3 times a day, I look in Maven and I look at, so for example, going back to March, the very far left. So the blue is how many people were tested. And so if you look at the blue across from left to right, you can see how that's been very variable, right? Like kind of like a couple bell curves in there. The orange is how many of those have been tested positive. So some sections of time, if you will, had no positive cases. So we're looking at like in August, you can tell, and it's hard sometimes because our percentages are so small, but if you really look closely, you can see the blue and the orange. What's really smaller is the percentage of who's been tested to who's been positively diagnosed. And that's a number that honestly you could barely see, because when I calculate the division numerator and denominator for those, say, 4 or 5 days, I get percentages like 1.2%, 1.4%, 1.7%. So they're very, very minute, which is why you probably would not be able to see that percentage on this graph. But I know in the raw data what the numbers are. But it does give you a good idea of what's kind of the trends, what's been happening in the community. And again, some contacts say, you know what, I'm not going to get tested. They do their quarantine and they are not represented on this graph. This is only for positive cases only, a confirmed lab test. Questions on that?
Hi, Kate, this is Ryan. I have a
Hi,
question.
Ryan.
Does the information cross state lines? Like, I know personally, I was tested in August because I had to go in the hospital, but I was in Connecticut. Does it cross over?
It does. So
in
what
case.
will happen is if and it can be contacts and it can be positive cases. So for example, there were 2 or 3 residents that had gone to Rhode Island in August. And so the contact tracers in Rhode Island actually faxed me information about those contacts so I could do the follow-up. So it does cross lines in terms of where they actually live, not so much where they visited.
Okay.
And that's happened quite a bit in the summer.
Yeah, just curious, since people I'm sure were traveling.
Yes. And if they go to those restricted states, then there's a whole other process, quarantine or get tested within 72 hours. And that's a follow-up also. And people are funny, sometimes I get people that love to talk and other people will not talk to me. So it varies, and you just have to get the most information you can during that conversation.
The other,
Any other comments or questions on that? I can also tell you that we have been very fortunate in our community that we have had very few deaths. We've had only 4. And they've been elderly and with chronic disease.
Kate, have you noticed if the severity of the cases has gone down over the weeks and months?
Yes, absolutely. So now the symptoms are more like runny nose, stuffiness, congestion. Some person had an earache. It's definitely the acuity, if you will, of symptoms has definitely weakened, at least in our population of people.
But still wear your masks and stay 6 feet apart.
I was in the post office today and there were some ladies in there that didn't have them on. And I was like, and they're looking at me like with my mask. And I'm like, do you need a mask? And they wouldn't even respond to me. So, you just stay away. You just, self-protect, wash your hands, do the right thing. But not everybody thinks the same way. So it's okay. You can only control what you can.
And that's where I come in.
my partner in crime. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm the sign lady and the mask police.
Yes. And I must to add that, what's been really great is when this all hit the proverbial fan, we had to really work closely with police and fire, because as first responders, they needed a mechanism in terms of when someone called into dispatch and the dispatcher would collect certain information around, coughing or fever, shortness of breath, et cetera. So, so they would wear PPE accordingly, right? Because that makes sense clinically that they would do that to protect themselves. But if that resident comes back as a positive, so say they go to the ER and they do get tested, the turnaround time can be, I'm going to say it's still about 2 to 3 days. What I do is when I find out that test is positive, I communicate back to the fire and police, because if they have to go back to that residence, I want them to be extremely careful in terms of that person is positive, and we certainly don't want, our first responders to get ill. So that relationship, I think, has been really super. And so I all I do is I inform them of the address. They don't know anything else. And then I put them on day 1 and I take the address off on day 14. And that's worked well.
This is Chelsea. I kind of wanted to circle back to something we were talking about a little bit, rewind a couple of minutes. We were thinking about how athletics could play a role into increased contacts, not necessarily increased contraction. I'm wondering, with all of the guidelines in place, where, if amongst your circles, if you're able to determine where those contacts are really coming into play. I know that in the school setting, we are trying to keep the kids 6 feet and greater apart. And so hopefully, there's not actual contact in that way. Trying to picture where that dangerous or contact point is.
Well, for example, on a hockey rink, there is no 6 feet apart when you're, going into the wall or whatever they're doing to get the puck. And I know there's been several conversations across the state where those players were not wearing masks. They were wearing masks on the bench, but when they were out on the ice, they were not. And so several of the contacts that I've been working with were exposed on the hockey field. I'm sorry, the ice hockey rink.
That would do it.
Yeah, that would do it. So it's understanding the protocol, it's understanding why. And, when there's some deviation, there's going to be increased risk of transmission.
Okay, thank you.
And
That's
last week,
kind of how
actually,
it works. If they're coughing on each other and they're breathing heavy and they're dropping those droplets into the air, it just takes one positive to expose multiple others, and then they become the contacts. So
Dr. Kate Brown last week had stated that hockey was one of the reasons, the most number of outbreaks in the last couple of weeks were attributed to hockey cases throughout.
Yeah.
So I think they're looking and reevaluating the high risk sports right now.
mm-hmm. Right. I think that's the next phase, right? Because you don't have data, every month. When you think about March and schools closing down and going remote, et cetera, they didn't have data on students. So now that students are back, then they can get the data and find out what's going on. And that's really how that investigation works. And then they can start trending. Where are the cases happening? Is it basketball players? Is it soccer players? Is it, those really super, super close contacts, like, trying to get a puck on the ice? And then that data is going to really start to talk. But, you need to be able to sell it, because you can prove a lot with data and educate people about it. So I think that's going to get more evident.
Anybody else from the school board have any questions?
Well, and if anyone does, you can always visit the town website, southwickma.net. All of our contact information, if you need to send me an email or give me a call, is on that site. And we're always available for information. I try to get back to everybody as much as I can. It's hard being in and out of the office right now with the pandemic, but I try to return phone calls and emails as fast as possible.
Right. And I want to thank the school committee for this time, because, I really think that the more we can talk and educate and dismiss myths, because we have had some experience in town that we don't respond to. We think someone's positive. And so those are learning lessons for all of us. But I think the more we can talk and share and plan and strategize, I think we're doing the best thing for our community and the people that live there. So I appreciate that collaboration very, very much. It can be a very daunting job. But, when you have, the school and the school nurses and people can work together, I just think it's fabulous, because I know towns that do not have that. And I'm sure that has got to be very, very difficult. So I appreciate the support and communication very much.
Thank you for your time tonight and over the past months.
You're welcome.
It's been great working with everybody.
Absolutely. And so, you know what? I take one day at a time, right? One day. I think sometimes hard for me as a nurse. I want to control everything. I can't control this. It's a virus. It's very sneaky, but we do the best that we can. And I have great faith in that. We do the best we can with the information at hand. and then we move forward. And I think that's really all we can do is to provide that service to our community. So thank you again.
Thank you, Kate and Tammy, and look forward to talking to you both on Thursday.
Okay, I won't be
Talk to
there
you then.
unfortunately, but my cohort will be, my co-partner.
I'll keep everybody posted on all the latest and greatest.
I know you will. Okay, have a great night, everybody.
Good night.
Okay, take care.
Okay, up next is the Regional School District Strategic Plan.
Hi, this is Superintendent Jen Willard. I just wanted to go over some of the changes that we made this year due to the COVID pandemic. And I didn't want to leave our 4 strategic objectives of engaged learning, shared educational leadership, instructional technology, and a guaranteed and viable curriculum. But what I wanted to do was to make sure that it was aligned with our current practices amidst this COVID pandemic. So if Amy, can you just scroll to the next page where we talk about the high impact initiatives? So what I did was I wanted you to see what I went through is I went through the high impact initiatives that we had, and I highlighted any changes that were made, and I actually did the strike through for the ones that we would be removing. So you could see the changes that were made. I just want to let you know that our professional development this year was on an emphasis on how to teach each of these through a remote or a hybrid model of instruction. We do want to keep our students engaged. We're seeing some tweaks that already need to be made for our second semester and some of the hybrid plans that we're offering right now. So we are working on how to keep that rigor and that student engagement alive, even when students are home remotely learning. The other change that was made was to our instructional technology. We had a gradual implementation of one-to-one, but due to the COVID pandemic, it was a rapid implementation of our one-to-one initiative, and that I actually had to change this mid-year or mid-month, because we did just find out that the computers, 835 that we had ordered in May that we thought were going to be delivered in November, they're now giving us a December date. So I did have by December of 2020, I did have to change it to January of 2021. Again, this is no fault of our technology department or ordering, none of that. It's the situation that we're in with COVID, and that we don't have control over when our laptops are going to be delivered. The good news is we did just receive 150 Lenovo's that are already been distributed so that we could start diagnostic testing, but our large order of our one-to-one computers, we did not get yet, and we don't anticipate getting until December. A guaranteed and viable curriculum. We did have to develop a schedule that provides for maximum in-person for grades K through 4 and vulnerable students. And I did take out to provide the early intervention service in grades K through 2. That's one that will be going back in once we go back to our old normal. But for this school year, we did develop a schedule that did provide for maximum in-person, which means that we needed to take our early intervention teachers and put them in a classroom teacher role. However, class sizes in first grade went from between 16 and 18 or 18 to 20, and they're down to about 10 students in a classroom. So we did dramatically shift the class sizes in our early intervention grades, but we did use our early intervention teachers as classroom teachers. We are going to begin the slow rollout of our new reading program in grades K through 6. And we are proud to say that this is the first year, even in COVID, that we will have benchmark data to provide to the school committee K through 12 on reading and math that will show beginning of the year data and end of the year data. We thought it was super important to have this information. due to the loss of instructional time last school year due to the COVID pandemic. And we want to make sure that our students, both in-person, hybrid, and in-person, hybrid, and remotely, are learning and keeping pace with each other, and making sure that we are constantly benchmark testing our students to monitor their growth and their progress. So those are the changes that were made to the district strategic plan. Again, one of them will be going back in as soon as we go back to the old normal, but I wanted to fill you in and make sure you could see the changes that we made.
Any questions from the school board to Superintendent Willard on the strategic plan? Okay, moving on to policies. No policies for review this evening. Moving on to action items.
Move to approve the following fundraisers for the 2021 academic year: SRS yearbook advertisement sales, Wreaths Across America drive-in movie partnership with the Southwick Civic Fund, and class of 2021 driveway painting recommended.
So moved.
Didn't unmute fast enough. Second.
Any questions from the committee on this action item?
I had a little question about the drive-in movie. I'm wondering, did we have volunteers working to sell those tickets? Was there a certain percentage? It's really exciting. I'm sure it was successful. I guess that's afterwards, but I just didn't know. It says that many will be donated. So I didn't know if there was a certain amount or a certain percentage, just how thankful we were, kind of thing.
I don't have the answer to that, Chelsea, but I can certainly find it for you.
Thanks.
Any other questions on this action? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Start with Pam.
Yes.
Chelsea.
Yes.
Ted. Ted.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Maria.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
And Jeff is a yes. Motion passes 7-0-0.
Move to approve home education proposals HS 2021-72 through HS 2021-73 recommended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions on the home ed proposals? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Pam.
Yes.
Chelsea.
Yes.
Ted.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Maria.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
And Jeff is a yes. Motion passes 7-0-0.
Move to approve the agreement between the Southwick Tallinn Granville Regional School Committee and the Cafeteria Workers Association for the period of July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2023 recommended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions on this motion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Pam.
Yes.
Chelsea.
Yes.
Ted.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Maria.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
And Jeff is a yes. Motion passes 7-0-0.
Okay. Did we decide on who we were going to send as the delegate to the mass conference, even though it's virtual on a Saturday this year? Is it you, Ted?
Pardon? No, it's not going to be me.
Is there anybody who is interested in being the delegate to the mass conference for voting purposes only remotely? Okay. Then
What
we
are the
do,
details? Sorry, Jen, this is Maria. What are the details for this meeting?
you just have to attend it via Zoom. I believe it is the Saturday after November 7th. I'm not sure what that Saturday date is exactly. I don't have the calendar in front of me. But they are going to go through some topic points and you will vote on them. Oh, Saturday is the 7th. It's usually done in person at the conference, but they're not holding the conference this year. It's all virtual. So they're doing the voting on Saturday.
They also have, it says join mask for lunch. Oh, throughout the year. They're doing something. Sorry, I just pulled out the bulletin. So do you think, I guess it might be quick then if it's just voting?
Ted, do you know how long it usually takes?
Well, how long these things can last?
Yeah.
In normal times, it's usually done in about an hour to an hour and a half. But with this, with the Zoom and everything, I would say it would be longer than that.
10 resolutions. I'm just not jumping because I spend like 15 hours on Zoom every day. So if anyone wants the screen time, otherwise I can be the backup. Got my blue light glasses.
It does say, in addition, they strongly encourage all delegates to participate in a brief training session held twice, and they list some dates in order to familiarize themselves with the online resolution discussion process and voting procedures.
So I'm not hearing any volunteers.
It's okay, we can move forward.
When's the last day we have to vote that delegate?
And they also talk about having 2 different devices. And this thing seemed to be overcomplicated. That's why I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
Should we also have the opportunity to discuss some of those? There's an anti-racism, lowering the voting age. There's high stakes testing. Should we discuss those as a committee as well before? If we get a person to go?
That would be tonight.
Okay, as well.
Like we need to have a delegate voted in tonight.
Yep,
We're not going to meet again until
after that.
November. Yeah.
10 resolutions.
In the past, we have not discussed them. We've voted in our delegate and put the faith in our delegate. We can discuss them this evening if you would like to. It's up to the committee.
There really isn't a lot in it this year from what I read.
All right, I'm going to volunteer to be the MASC delegate for the meeting on November 7th, if the committee is willing.
I think that is wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for stepping up, Jeff.
Okay, move to appoint Jeffrey Hool as the official voting delegate to the MASC 2020 annual meeting recommended.
Enthusiastically so moved.
And second that.
Okay, any questions? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Pam,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes, thank you.
Ed,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and Jeff is a yes. Begrudgingly, 7-0. Okay, moving on to reports. Up first is Superintendent Willard.
Okay, I do have just a couple reports I wanted to go through tonight. One of them being at the last school committee meeting, I went through the different schools with the type of program that each student is attending. And then I broke it up through Tolland, Granville, Southwick, and School Choice and Metco. So I did, Ted, go and I got all the information for all of the towns, and I put together just a simple table for you to look at our current enrollment and currently how each school is broken down and by each town. Does anybody have any questions for me on that? I could bring it up at the next school committee meeting if you'd like to formulate some questions. Okay, piggybacking on this table, we recently received a Google slide document, for lack of better words, from the state, and it was broken up into each school district, and it was broken up into the number of students that they have, what percentage do they have in person, what percentage do they have hybrid, and what percentage do they have remote. And out of 400 school districts, more were listed, but I think their data was flawed. I think there was about anybody that was 99.8 or above full in person, they hadn't been recorded their data properly because we all have to offer some sort of remote. And for example, Springfield was in this graph with 100% in person, and I know that that's not correct. So to the 400 school districts that look like their data has been reported properly, we are ranked 368th out of 400 school districts as the highest percentage. So there's only 32 school districts that have a greater percentage of in-person students attending school in the state of Massachusetts. That's a pretty big accomplishment. There is nobody in Western Mass, the only school district close to us that has more students attending in person. The closest is Quabbin. We currently have 30.9% of our students learning in person. Quabbin has 35.1. Tantascwa has 36.4. And then Worthington, which only has 64 kids in it, has 78.1 in person. So besides those three communities, we have the greatest percentage of in-person student learning in Western Mass. And for that, I applaud you. I applaud the work that you did as a school committee and the support I received and the support of our school union to get our students in and made that a priority. I can tell you just by looking at this that our students are benefiting from the plan. And I'm really proud to say that in Western Mass, there is nobody who has a greater percentage of students attending in person. So I'm really proud about that. I'm really proud. So thank you very much. The other piece of data I did want to share tonight is tomorrow is Unity Day, where we're requesting that all students and staff wear orange to stomp out bullying. A parent-teacher conference day is tomorrow, and we have a half day for children. I also want to let you know that we did receive, as I mentioned earlier, 150 of our Lenovo's that we ordered, and we have started distributing them across the district so we could start our in-district benchmark assessments that I mentioned. We hope to have all of our students benchmarked within the next 2.5 weeks, and then we will be able to come up with a distribution plan for those 150 Lenovo's in case we have to send some classrooms home remotely. We will have computers to send home. The principals right now are collecting numbers of how many students actually need a computer should we have to go remotely for the number of students who are in person learning. And finally tonight, I do have the COVID numbers. Woodland School so far has cumulatively tested 42 negative COVID results, and They've had 1 positive COVID result. Powder Mill has had 33 negative COVID results and 0 positive results. And Southwick Regional School has had 19 negative COVID results and 1 positive COVID test result. And the close contacts identified by the district is at 7. And that is where we stand. And that is the information that we are posting on our website weekly for the community.
Any questions for Superintendent Willard? Okay, moving on to the Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Presnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I wanted to mention is that the governor did release a revised budget proposal a couple of weeks ago. As you know, we're still waiting for the finalization of a state budget for fiscal year 21. The governor, as far as they got in the process, the governor had released his proposal, his original proposal back in January. Then COVID hit, and the legislature's pretty much been stalled on their role in the process due to really the hope that there would be some federal stimulus money that would come through for the states and local government. The legislature did pass a local aid resolution in September, which essentially looked at the primary education funding sources, Chapter 70 state aid, and the required local contributions from towns and cities, and established those at the FY20 levels after adjusting for enrollment and inflation. That happened in September. We kind of sat around for a month waiting for additional information. A couple weeks ago, the governor released a revised budget proposal, which included new cherry sheet estimates with state revenue sources and the charges for things like school choice and charter school tuition. The net effect of the revisions to the governor's original budget proposal in terms of state funding sources is a net decrease or reduction of $33,000. There were increases and decreases to both revenue and expenditure items, but the net effect is an overall reduction of $33,000, which is based on where our heads were at back in the springtime. I think it's a pretty good landing spot right now. Again, we're waiting for the legislature to take this matter up and come up with a state budget, and hopefully they'll be able to deal with that soon and provide some final clarity on the FY21 revenue picture. And that's all I have.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Presnell? Okay, we'll move on to subcommittees and liaisons. The Finance Committee did hold a meeting some point last week. We reviewed the balance sheet for this year. We had a discussion about the very information that Steve just shared with us. And we also had listened to a presentation, and I'm gonna forget the acronym of the company. But this company is the investment firm we use for our outward commitments for retirees. And you've helped me out here. What is the name?
Yep. Yeah, I can help you out. So we heard from representatives from PARS, the Public Agency Retirement Services organization that the district started working with about a year and a half ago for an investment of OPEB funds, the other post, which stands for other post-employment benefits. essentially deals with funding or pre-funding retiree health insurance costs. The district then making modest contributions for that trust, if you will. It's their trust funds that are held specifically and only for that purpose. Like a year and a half ago, the district entered into an arrangement with PARS, and the funds are now managed through the Vanguard investment program. We heard a report on last week as to the performance of the fund and kind of where we're at.
Did you have anything you want to fill in on the finance committee meeting?
Not really. I mean, it was a good report that we got.
Okay, LPVEC, Pam, do you have anything to report on?
Actually, we have a meeting tomorrow, so I will be able to report out after that.
And my side has still not met this year, the school year, sorry. Okay, policy subcommittee, do you folks have a date scheduled yet?
It's Maria. No, we don't. Maybe we could look at the calendars. Right now, it's just Chelsea and I on the policy committee. So just gotta check the schedules.
Okay. For buildings and grounds, we have not held a meeting. I will set some time up with Steve before our next committee meeting. So we'll have something to report then. Any of the liaison positions, do any of you have anything to report out on?
Oh, there's a parade, Southwick 250 parade. I wasn't prepared to share, but there is going to be a miniature parade going on for Southwick 250 through some of the neighborhoods and main roads. I think that it's only going to be like 20 cars or something long, but it's something to make up for the fact that we're not having our grand parade this year. So I would check out the Southwick 250 Facebook page.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. It's time for our second public comment, and I will ask Amy to check this.
Yes, Chairman Houle, I have one public comment that's been received. It's from Robert Stevenson, Southwick, Mass. He states, to respond to Kate Johnson and give more detail to the committee, the study that I was referring to was performed by the University of Wisconsin this fall. Their findings were that the incidence of COVID-19 cases among youth soccer players is not increased compared to the national pediatric case rate. They collected the information from more than 120 clubs from 34 states, representing 90,000 youth soccer athletes. They participated in 45,000 training sessions and 6,000 games. A total of 325 positive cases were reported, including 282 positive cases in players and 43 positive cases in staff. Of the 325 positive cases, one case was reportedly traced to transmission in soccer. The 282 cases represent a rate of 310 cases per 100,000 children. The nationwide case rate among children in the U.S. was 477 cases per 100,000 children. This shows a lower incidence in the kids playing soccer. The link for the study is, and he provides the link, ortho.wisc.edu/research/labs/Watson. I will be forwarding off to Kate Johnson as well so she can familiarize herself with this information. This highlights the importance of a subcommittee or an advisory committee to be put together in order to give the school board all relevant information to make a sound decision, as is stated in the school board's own policies. And that concludes public comment for this evening.
Okay. Last up is committee discussion. Anybody have any old business for this evening? Anybody have any new business for this evening? All right, at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
Pam,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and Jessica. Everybody has a great evening.